right, we'll try to do one more what I consider meaningful video. Um, so I was recently watching Cliff High, and I realized that this guy is full of shit. Sometimes it takes quite a little while to learn that because there's so much rhetoric where people try to kick up dust, make noise, self-validate, and they do this by using the general legality, the general terms found in consensus. In other words, what Cliff does understand is that the etymology is constantly shifting and changing. The way he'd put it is he'd probably go more toward the origins of the nomenclature and say, when you look at this LLM, it's meaningless. Most people don't understand that. They don't understand, for instance, when you begin to add up all the numbers, just 1 through 9, not considering that 0 is, in fact, the only one, and that when you get into true theoretical abstract number systems, the only number system that you can really authenticate as something that takes place in the paraliminal as a number. In other words, 0, what's considered 0, what some might consider monad, the anti number, ANTE, that which comes before. So making the all other numbers existentially obtruse thereafter. So once you start playing with the rhetoric, kicking up smoke, creating content from nothing, following the algorithm, the popular mode, the modus operandi, the again, the consensus, that which circulates and is talked about, the electron storm. You want to postulate yourself as a cloud, as if you are significant, where in fact, Cliff High produces nothing. He mimics everything. He doesn't understand anything. And I think that he's an abusive old man, actually. And I think a lot of times we see prevalence of what happens to people. And as soon as we speak it, it happens to us. And when we use that phrase, life imitates art, right? Art imitates life, life imitates art, kind of thing, vice versa. We fail to see that we are a product of that techne, and that we are trying to produce a significance of ourselves by making ourselves essentially a 9. We're trying to exist within a 9 computational subset, even when the numbers themselves refute 9. When you begin to add up 9 back to 1 backwards, 9 plus 8, and then through the sequential performance, we begin to see that there's a derivation and a breaking off where the numbers imply that they want to get away from 9 itself, right? That everything then goes back into and begins to validate a subset system of 8, 10, and 12. That 12 is the learning curve, is the mechanism of telling us where we're supposed to go. That we are in fact this phantom 13th, and that to even say 13 is essentially like saying the entry point, the gateway, the name of God, right? because 13 is a transient number and cannot truly really exist here. So again, we look at phi, we look at phi in a performative way, where we see that 8 came before 13 in phi or phi. 21 is the next sequential number. So 8 is oftentimes depicted even with the singularity.net, even with infinity, which implies Google, right? Some respect. 21 being the endpoint, the last number, the second cycle, the inference of the second cycle, the first of the second cycle, reverting back to a 1, kind of could be depicted and seen as the Gauss sequence, 101 on the way up, 101 on the way down, that directly implicates diagonal mathematics and also takes the x, the compass and the square, into account and shows a diagonal consistency. And then whether or not you take the Emerald Tablets seriously or not, you get into the Brothers Black and you get into the angles or the angels and those that live in an oppositionally defiant world, or are we, right? So you have those who exist in the paraliminal, and when you really begin to look at what is the paraliminal, you start to see the emergence of this fifth force, which I've talked about prior to, and the freezing of electrons at a certain angle, right? Or angel again. So it all sounds like rhetoric, but the numbers don't disappear. And the smoke is intentional, and the divergence is intentional. And the hiding behind the true number system and what true mathematics are is quite intentional. Because if we were living in the moment and never had to stoically, meaning keeping our nose to the grindstone, accepting things the way they are, right? But really believing in a hard universe where we need to really harden ourselves to the consistency of the universe, and rather to see the universe as a mere aphorism, smoke and mirrors, and that is to say that to be the number, to understand the number, to actually be a part of the number, infers that 13th, that transient one, right, that is only seen as the 13th in the paraliminal or the subliminal layers, where you're actually standing sedentary, rotting away in a carbon-based flesh cell-divided suit, where you are misinterpreting and living within a Mandelbrot set that was designed to misinterpret itself. Sequence and error.